Madam Mayor, you're right to go.
Thank you. Is Councillor Gibbons online? Can't hear you, Lynette.
No, not at this point in time.
Councillor McKibben? Yep, okay.
Yep.
Okay, councillors, welcome to our extraordinary meeting today. I'll open the meeting at 2 o'clock. Due to the current COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with the newly legislated state government requirements, the 26th of February 2021 extraordinary council meeting will be conducted using Zoom webinar facilities. The meeting will be closed to members of the public and will be available for viewing via Zoom webinar facilities. A link to the extraordinary council meeting will be available on the council website. Recordings of council meetings or parts thereof cannot be copied, recorded, reproduced, reused or transmitted without the prior written consent of the General Manager. The meeting is being recorded and made publicly available on Council's website, and persons attending the meeting should refrain from making any defamatory comments. Council acknowledges that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Wiradjuri, Gundungurra and Darug people and respects the history and culture of elders both past and present. Record of attendance. Councillor Gibbons is coming right now. We'll just wait 2 seconds for Councillor Gibbons to enter the room.
Hello.
Thank you, Kerry. Their record of attendance, everybody is in attendance. Thank you. Any declarations of interest, councillors? Page 5. No declarations, thank you. We'll move on to page 6, item reports for decision, item 501. Community Hub Concept Plan 1A submissions. There is a recommendation there, councillors. The council will include all submissions together with preferred points indicated at the meeting for consideration during final design of the Oberon Community Hub. I need someone to move that recommendation, please, councillors. Councillor McCarthy and Councillor Capel, thank you. General Manager wants to make a comment.
Yeah, just a council's clarity there. They've been furnished with 3 copies of correspondence in relation to this matter. You've been provided with all of them, and I trust that that will be included as part of your deliberations in this process.
Thank you, Gary. Okay, councillors. Councillor McCarthy.
I know it's pretty straightforward. We're going out to the architect, as long as he takes the notice on board, especially the box gutters. And I can't see in this submission, but one of the other submissions were that the toilets for the staff should be separate. And as long as he takes that on board, I'm happy for it to go out.
Councillor Capel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just think that it's the right thing to do, to include all the submissions along with their preferred points. So fair to the people who have made those submissions.
Thank you, councillor. I will just say, councillors, that we will need to indicate the preferred points that we want the architect to take on board from this report. So I've already heard Councillor McCarthy mention box gutters and toilets. Councillor Capel, did you have any particular?
Yeah.
We need to indicate.
The one thing that I thought was important is the access to the auditorium, the big auditorium, for if there's a big event there needs to be adequate reception space for the people leaving the venue.
Thank you. I just personally, before I go out to the other councillors on Zoom, I think we should pay or ask the architect to pay attention to equipment storage areas, which I think are insufficient at the moment in the concept plan that we've looked at, and also yeah, I think that's that's my main thing. Any other comments on this, councillors? Councillor McKechnie.
Yes, I agree with all the points so far, especially just like to support Clive in the point on box cutters. We definitely should be avoiding them, even if there is an extra cost involved, but we definitely need to avoid the box cutters. Just have a couple other points to the mobility impaired toilets. I think we need to make sure that those ramps are adequate and that they're wide enough. There's no detailed drawings yet, but we just need to make sure that they're very easily negotiable and that they conform with the specs for those items. The other thing is that's been raised is the window coverings and floor coverings. We need to look at those, and in conjunction with that, we need to look at the insulation. It's probably better for us to go a higher grade of insulation in the walls, and then one grade higher than the minimum spec in the roofing, both for heating and cooling. But they also should be mindful of the window and wall coverings, window and floor coverings to take that insulation. There's no mention of double glazing. That's another point that it's probably going to come out in the final specifications, but it's also really important that we use double glazing techniques.
I do recall double glazing was indicated in our discussions, so I think that one's fine.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lyon. I'll come to the Zoom participants in a moment. Councillor Lyon.
Sorry. Yes, I agree with you on the storage. It would be better if it was stored. There's storage for chairs and furniture, and for the large function space. But there's also storage for community groups. Also, is there space set aside for the historical collections? Now, we're only a young country, but we do have history of this Oberon district, and does it need to be preserved in a special facility like an air conditioner room or something?
Well, I have actually spoken to the librarian. I don't know if anybody else has spoken to the librarian about this. And she's assured me that Oberon has a very small local history collection, which does not require special archival actions, but does require expanded space. So then we need space. It doesn't need any archival special action for that. It's mostly consists of the Alan Brown collection, and that mostly consists of articles and photos that have been photocopied from the Oberon Review over a 30-year period. And these articles are all digitised now and readily available online from a variety of sources. And as I said, having spoken to the librarian, I've been assured that the current method of storage is very adequate for all of our local history collection, including Alan Brown. When the current storage for the Alan Brown collection and the photos was carried out by the Friends of the Oberon Library on advice from the State Library of New South Wales on how to archive that and keep that in good condition, and that's how it sits at the moment. So the librarian has assured me that nothing further is required.
Thank you. The kitchen, if we can't afford to put in all of the facilities that would make a commercial kitchen, could we sort of have like a planning so it's designed that it could be a possible addition later?
So kitchen design. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Councillor McKibben.
Madam Mayor, have I been unmuted? Thank you. Yes, look, I welcomed all the submissions. I thought they were good. I fully support Councillor McCarthy and Councillor McKechnie in relation to the box gutters issue. I think if we can avoid them, we should at all possibility. I also, in relation to what Councillor McKechnie said, I recall them saying the windows would be double glazed, because I think I asked the question single, double or triple, and they said double. So I'm assuming that's going to be the case. In relation to insulation, yes, I would agree with Councillor McKechnie. I asked if there was going to be R5 in the walls and what was going to be in the ceiling, and they actually didn't know. So I would agree with him that we should upgrade the insulation, noting the environment we're in, to at least R5, R6 in the walls, and similarly in the ceiling cavity. I thought a number of the storage of chairs and tables, etc., needing additional storage was a matter we should take on. I also thought the concept of maybe a larger foyer and exit to, I think it was Dart Street, should also be noted. And as part of this consideration, obviously, I've put forward a notice of motion for costings on fit out and for through life support, which we will need to take into account as well. I note in relation to Councillor McKechnie's raised the floor coverings and also window coverings. I'm assuming that if we're doing anything other than what is specified in relation to floor coverings, and if we're putting things like curtains up in certain rooms, that they would be included as part of the fit out cost and not part of this build cost. So we might have to look at those separately. The other thing is, I noticed there was a bit of contention whether the business room should be smaller or larger. I might wonder whether we should look into that a bit further. I'm certainly no expert on that. It depends how much the business rooms are going to be used. I noticed in the suggestion, some suggesting larger. I think you and Stuart suggested smaller and more space should be given to other areas. But I noticed in Deputy Mayor Kellam's comments that you suggested they be larger. So we need to, I think as a council, we need to probably make a direction in that area to the architects rather than leave it up in the air, as we probably should do in a number of these things where there is some disparity between opinions. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comments, councillors? Councillor Gibbons.
Just over an Arts Council about regarding provide facilities for young mums, and up a bit further includes possible child secure play areas adjacent to meeting areas for the young mothers to join interest groups. Is that covered? I just think there needs to be room there and cope for the younger mums and get them involved with the activities.
Thank you. Councillor Kellam. Can we thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you, Councillor McKibben, for mentioning the item I raised. When I looked at that business centre plan, I was struck by its. It was a bit pokey, and there were spaces that were dedicated to certain functions where that didn't need to be the case. We have used a large space for the function centre, which is dividable. And I think on a smaller scale, that is the same principle we should be using in the business centre. So the rooms are adaptable and are multifunctional where they can be.
Thank you. Any other comments, councillors? Councillor Donny. Can we unmute Councillor Donny? Thank you. Councillor Donny.
Yes, Madam Mayor, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, thank you. I don't wish to run through the whole list and repeat what the other councillors have said. They seem to have covered all the salient points that I took down. But I did follow the format, aside from making my own list, I did follow the format that was in the business papers, where it had a range of numbered points, and there was to be indicated whether they were in or out. So if I could just ask, bear with the recorder, I just would like to give those that data as to the points that I thought were important. There's a little bit of repetition and they cover most of what the other councillors have said, but they also therefore support that argument. By that I mean, I'd like to say point 1, C, G and H. From Sig Sovic, points 3, 5, 8 and 9. Ewan Stewart, 13, 14, 16, 18. U3A, 25, 26, 28. Oberon Shire ratepayers, 29 and 30. Kellam, 34. Sullivan, 37 and a half and 38. I'm hoping that when they're put to the architect, they express much the same opinion as the other councillors have put forward. I think of particular interest to me was a bit of an improvement in the kitchen facilities, perhaps not for 250. Perhaps an improved library space. And I think the points about insulation and floor covers and stuff like that are very important. That's the comment I'd like to make, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Johnson. So we have a councillors. Councillor McKibben.
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, to have a report charge, but it was something that was raised that twigged my mind with Councillor Tony, and you'd be well aware of the issue. In relation to the Burriga Hall, they have actually obtained quite good value for commercial kitchen equipment. I think it would be therefore, and I'd suggest this may be outside the architects, but council could investigate it, that we maybe look at that supplier to actually do some pricing of what commercial kitchen equipment would cost us, either new or second hand, to put in that kitchen, the proposed kitchen, to compare it with what a high-level domestic kitchen would cost. Because I was quite surprised at the pricing, and you'll recall, Madam Mayor, that Jackie Wright obtained from some company in Sydney. The other thing I did want to comment on was there's been a couple of suggestions about a pop-up cafe, etc., which I think is a good idea, but I don't think we've got the funds to put that in now. I don't know if we probably can't even fit it within the total building carcass. But it may be something for the future that the architect could sort of indicate where an area could be or could be added onto the building, where one could be added, or if it could be done in conjunction with a kitchen. Because obviously we would want someone privately to run it, so the council's not running it. So it'd have to be sort of profitable in its own right, and it may only operate from certain hours. But I think it's worth consideration. The other issue is the Child Mining Centre, which has obviously been raised as one of the preferable. We obviously have to, do we then have to engage a staff member to act as a child minder within the facility? And that would be an extra cost to council in the operation. I think it's a very admirable suggestion and a great idea, but I'm just not sure how we're going to cope with staffing it and having an appropriately qualified person to do that, because obviously having a fiance who's in the childcare and kindergarten area, I know the parameters you have are quite strict in all of this area. But I would just ask those who may be better informed in these areas to comment.
Councillor McKibben, I think the suggestion was to provide a space, not a service.
Are we obliged then to provide a minder if the parent goes away looking for books or on the computer? I don't know what the requirement is.
There are children in the library at the moment that have their own space.
Okay,
Item under.
okay. I'm happy with that. Then I would fully support that on that basis.
I noticed councillor Donny supported item 3 in Mr. Sobik's submission about library stacks. I can tell you that library stacks, there are two kinds of library stacks. There's open stacks, which are the bookshelves you see in your library, and there are what they call hidden stacks, which are for items that are seldom borrowed or resources that are not available for the public. Hidden stacks in modern libraries are no longer used. There are no hidden stacks anymore. Hard copies of all publications are kept at the state and the national libraries and can be sourced from there upon request. So hidden stacks are no longer a part of modern libraries. Of course, the National Library and the State Library do have extensive hidden stacks because they supply the rest of the country with books that are seldom used. So a space for hidden stacks, in my view, is unnecessary, and I've already covered the humidity and temperature control for the local history collection on advice from our librarian. So whether that makes a difference to Councillor Doney's preference, I'm not sure. I'll go back to Councillor Doney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My circumstance means I actually can't have the business papers in front of me at the same time as I've got the screen. But no, I'm quite happy with that. If it's not too much, just return to the pop-up cafe. If we have an improved kitchen facility for a pop-up cafe, all we need is not intruding too much on businesses in the main street, is a van parked out on the grass verge. That can be our pop-up cafe if we have that level of attendance and feel the need to, invite a private provider aside from our kitchen facilities, which can be run by us or a community group. A pop-up cafe can be, and we know they turn up to the Australia Day celebrations in Oberon. That's all we need. Thank you, Madam.
Okay, councillors, the General Manager has compiled a list here of all of your comments and suggestions. I don't think we need to name them all in the recommendation. I think that the recommendation as it stands, the preferred points be indicated for the meeting's consideration. Is everybody happy with the recommendation stand as it is, to be accompanied by the list that General Manager's created?
Yep.
I'm going to put the recommendation. Councillors, all in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 502, councillors, on page 9. O'Connell Recreation Ground, mortise, timber post and rail fencing project. There's a recommendation there that council engage a current fencing contractor to supply and construct the final 75 lineal metres of mortise post and bracket 3 times rail fence along the Beaconsfield Road boundary of the O'Connell Recreation Ground at a quoted cost of $16,500 ex GST. That council provide funding from section 711 open space contributions and section 711 community facilities fund to complete the O'Connell Recreation Ground fencing project. Do I have a mover, please? Councillor Gibbons. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Doney, thank you. I wish to speak to this, Councillor Gibbons.
Through the chair, not really, but just that as the contractors that were involved before have done a good job, they're local contractors, and price is right, so I'd like to know to get on for it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Doney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got to say it's turning into a mighty fine fence down there. We do need to finish it. I notice on the quote there's space for caps on the fence posts as well. I'm very pleased it's grant money and not our money that has done most of the work to this point, but we do need to finish it. And I think the sources of funds identified are appropriate. I can only encourage council that as one of the gateways to Oberon council area, the fence invites and the way things are proceeding at O'Connell invites a huge amount of favourable comment. people think it looks terrific. It's a lovely entrance. You're coming across the river and into the council area. I know it has taken significant resources to achieve, but I think in the long run, I think it's going to be a really positive asset to the council. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Donny. Can I just note that the 16,500 on the quote doesn't include the caps? If you look at the quote, that the 16,500 recommended by the director is just to complete the post and rail fence 75 lineal metres. Councillor Donny.
I must admit, Madam Mayor, I had contrary advice. And so just technically limited again, I believe that was part of the one quote.
I'm looking at the quote, Councillor, and it isn't.
Okay, and just forgive my limited resources. What's the price beside it for caps?
Tin caps,
Yeah,
1800, yeah, around $1,900.
Okay, I did make a comment to the Director of Technical Services just recently about caps, suggesting that perhaps over time, if the parties agree, village funds could be used to provide caps. But I was assured it was part of the quote. So
Well, I'm looking at the quote, Councillor, and it's attached to the business paper, and it's definitely separate.
Part of the quote.
Well, it is part of the quote, but the 16,500 that's recommended by the director doesn't
excludes that. Okay. Well, that was the suggestion I made to the director, that if caps were not included, then in consultation with the right people, we might look at seeing if we can use some village funds to finish that point, because the caps do need to be done to protect a pretty valuable asset. So I would proceed along those lines with the caps, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McKibben.
Look, I've been back and forward to the Technical Services Director on this one. What I think I would like to see is an account for the 140,000 for this project under the Drought Communities Grant, to see actually what's been expended today and how it's been expended. I would have expected that to come with this, to show us that all monies are expended, how they've been expended, and that's why we're asking for 16,500 more. I now understand that there's been 43,750 spent on the first 200 metres, 43,750 spent on a second 200 metres, but then I'm told that we've actually done 411.5 metres. I find that a little difficult, because when I counted the number of panels, I came up with 386 metres, because each panel is 2.7 metres long. But I'm happy to go ahead as long as the Technical Services Director sort of verifies that. The other issue is that we have sprayed with a preservative paint the piece along O'Connell Road. We really need to do the whole fence. It's no good preserving part of it and not spend. And I asked the Technical Services Director, and I think it said it cost $2,100 for the paint and to do the spraying. It's no good having half the fence sprayed and the other half not sprayed. So I think we actually should be looking at including that cost. But what I would like to know from the Technical Services Director, and I thought he was going to circulate a paper, an exact breakdown of 140,000, because I understood that there was some money left over from the granite path, and I'm not sure where that's gone. And there is also the difference between the 46,270, which was the remaining amount of 140,000 that we allocated to the fence, and the 43,750, which the second amount cost. So I just don't understand, you know, we don't have a breakdown, a spreadsheet of how this 140,000 has actually ended up being spent. When we went to the recommendation in September, we were working on budgeted figures, not actually spent figures. We now should have actually spent figures. We should actually know whether there's any money left under that fund to go to this. Councillors should know that. So I'm foreshadowing an amendment, Madam Mayor, that would keep 1 as it is, propose a 2, council engage the fencing contractor to spray on the Beaconsfield Road fence from Little Green to the church a protective coating at a price of $2,887 if the Technical Services Director confirms that's the figure, exclusive of GST. Council reconcile the 100, this is number 3, Council reconcile 140,000 Drought Communities grant used for the O'Connell fence and footpath to ascertain if any funds remain unspent, and if so, those funds be allocated to 1 and 2 above. 4, any shortfall in funding after the reconciliation in 3 is performed for 1 and 2 above is to be funded from section 711 open space contributions and section 711 community facilities fund to complete the O'Connell Recreation Ground fencing project. And 5, the Technical Services Director verify the length of the fence completed under the existing amounts allocated to the fencing contractor. Because I can't get to 411, he assures me it's 411, but if I count the number of panels, it comes to 386. I'm happy if he verifies and satisfies himself on that. But I don't think, I think the Technical Services Director said he actually hadn't been out there to measure or look at it. He'd done it on Google. So that's my recommendation. I have given a copy of that proposed amendment to the Executive Secretary so that she has it at hand. I'd look for a seconder for that motion, please, Madam Mayor.
Okay,
That
councillor,
amendment.
do we have a seconder? I'll give the Executive Director a chance to.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to open my emails and copy it now. I've never received it.
Madam Mayor, can we talk about some of that before we move it, or we got to have
Well,
it
to
moved?
talk about it, the amendment, we need to talk about, we need a seconder for the amendment to talk about it.
Okay.
Councillors, the Executive Assistant has not received the email with the amendment in it, so she's having to copy that down at the moment.
I don't
So
have
bear
it
with
on
us,
it.
please.
I'm sorry. It's not included in that email.
I'll second Andrew's amendment.
We need to see what the amendment actually is. Or you're not worried about, you
Well,
can
he's
get it?
thought he read it out. So he'd have a copy.
I'm happy to read out the.
Because we might have to put another point in.
So just if council would stick with me, the first recommendation remains the same. The second recommendation is that the council engage the fencing contractor to spray on the Beaconsfield Road fence from Lindell Green to the church a protective coating at a cost of $2,887, exclusive of GST. The third is that council reconcile 140,000 Drought Communities grant used for the O'Connell fence and footpath to ascertain if any funds remain unspent, and if so, these funds be allocated to recommendations 1 and 2. For any shortfall in funding after the reconciliation in recommendation 3 is performed for 1 and 2 and is funded from section 7.11 open space and section 7.11 community facilities fund to complete the O'Connell Rec Ground fencing project. And 5, the technical services director verify the length of fence completed under the existing amounts allocated to the fencing contractor.
Sharon, that should say for 140,000. We did another note.
Number 3, yeah.
Would you like me to share the screen with the other councils now, Madam Mayor?
Sure.
Yes, okay, Councillor McKibben, is that your amendment?
Madam Mayor, in 4, I think after the words performed for 1 and 2 and is funded, not funding, is funded from.
Funded from.
It is, Madam Mayor. The only thing I would ask the technical services director, was the painting done by the fencing contractor? I wasn't sure about that.
Amendment, Councillor, before we go to discussion. McCarthy, you happy to second that amendment?
Was done by the fencing contractor that's spraying.
Now, you wish to speak to the amendment, Councillor McKibben, at all?
Well, I have spoken to it, Madam Mayor, but I would just say that, like all projects, I think before we ask it for any more money, especially when we're funding it ourselves, we should get a reconciliation of how the money has actually ended up being spent that the grant was for. I think this is good practice. So we received 140,000 grant. We budgeted for certain amounts to be spent. We indicated there was about $46,270.50 remaining. But we noted at the time that may be up or down. So we should have a reconciliation statement, I would have thought, as part of the business paper before we actually go to agreeing to provide additional funding. I thought that would have been a matter, of course, of project management. We actually should know what the path has cost us, what the fence has cost us to where the fencing contractor's got to, and any other costs incurred, such as the additional cost for protective coating on the O'Connell Road fence, so that we actually have a breakdown of the actual pricing. to see if there is any money left or if we're in deficit or what the situation is. If we're in deficit, then it may be that we need more than 16,500 plus the cost of doing it. I just don't believe the proper process has been here. When a business paper comes up like this, it should include that breakdown and reconciliation of how the grant's been spent before we then ask for more money from the council.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor,
The second thing,
have you finished, councillor McKibben, or are you still speaking? Sorry.
oh, sorry, I was just speaking to the other areas. I don't oppose us, obviously using more money. I mean, we have got, if I can use the term, a gold-plated fence here. You know, it's cost 90,000, a bit over 90,000 already. By the time we get to the end of this, it will be 106 to 108,000, I believe. So it's a very expensive fence. I think, as Councillor Donny has said, thank goodness we've got grant funds for the majority of it. But we certainly want to minimise the amount that we as a council have to put into this. And that's why I'm saying we need to look at the reconciliation of the 140,000. Similarly, I know this is a highly reputable fencing contractor, as Councillor Gibbons said, but I just couldn't get to the length of 411 metres that the Technical Services Director, as I said before, I just want him to do a verification. Doesn't have to come back to us, but he's just got to convince himself that that's the correct length, because I just did a count and couldn't come up, taking each panel length as 2.7 metres, I couldn't get up to 411. I did agree that there's 775 metres to go. That's not an issue. So that's why I have reframed this resolution as I have, Madam Mayor. And they're the reasons for it.
Thank you. The General Manager has indicated he'd like to make a comment here, and I'll come to Councillor.
My comment would simply be is that as part of any reconciliation of any kind of grant monies, council has to do that through the funding agency anyway. So I've got no problem with the reconciliation. Council's been supplied with a number of quotes and processes in regards to this project, and has been provided. I was of the belief that the matters have been dealt with appropriately. The matter of spraying Beaconsfield fence is a matter that the Technical Services Director took on board for longevity of the fence. It's a protective coating that protects the fence, and it's something that he and I agree with Councillor McKibben with in regards to his recommendation. So as that amendment sits, we sit reasonably comfortably with it if it's for council's benefit.
Thank you. Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you, Madam. I spoke to the Technical Services Director and suggested if we're going to do this extra bit of fence, we should have a setback for the filling point incorporated while we're doing the fence, so that it's maybe have 6 metres by 3 metres, so you can have the standpipe in that area. So we're not double working over ourselves. We're doing that now. It would require probably another $1,000 or something, but we should be considering that. I don't know why the director didn't put it in the report, because, like I said, I spoke to him about it. The other thing is, what was when I spoke to the contractor down there, I was led to believe that he was doing the fence around Linnell Green, but apparently it's changed. But he did emphasise that if a stay's not put in on the wooden fence properly, the existing fence, and they just run the new fence, the Linnell Green owner just doesn't do the fence properly, that fence will fall over. So I think we should engage our contractor to put the stay off that post on the O'Connell Road and the Beaconsfield Road. An appropriate stay, whether you want to go timber or metal or leave it up to the council. But he's to the point where he says that if it's not stayed properly, his fence will fall over on that end. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
But the same as Councillor McKibben. I thought we'd have got a report on the expended money, and I'll use the Carwood Road as an example. We got a grant for the Carwood Road, and I remember what Councillor McKibben said about if we've got money left over, we'll do a little bit extra road. There's $50,000 left over, but we didn't do the extra road. I know we're doing other work down there, but I thought, if you get what I mean, like, we need to know the expenditure on this, how much we've expended. That's why I support Andrew's recommendation there. But I still like to throw it out to the councils. Do you want to consider, instead of double work, put this filling point up of, say, 6 metres setback by 3 metres while he's doing the work? Because I think eventually you shouldn't have the trucks going into the wreck ground to fill up the thing. And I did have a win on last Thursday week. I spoke to the lady from Grenfell and I said, how are you going with the design? And I said, there's a green box in there in your design. She said, yes, it is. She said, Gary said it can be moved. More money. If we remove that green box, more money. But all I'm saying is that we should consider this setback point for the thing while we're actually building the fence. It might cost us an extra $1,000, but.
Okay, so does this need to be added to the amendment, or this can be taken in, or?
Through the chair, I'm happy for that to be taken in because it will be an additional expense because that will lead to additional fencing that's required.
Yes. Yeah.
The second thing is that it's not staff's intention not to expend grant monies in the way that they've been intended to do that, which is why we have indicated this to start with. The contracted monies have been provided to council as part of this. Council was aware that there was going to be a shortfall in this fence being completed, and this is the shortfall that we've got to. It's not supposed to be anything other than that, which is why I'm more than happy to give a reconciliation, because we need to do that as part of the project anyway. We do that as part of this process. So that's why I've got no problem in providing that to council moving forward.
Okay, so do you feel, I mean, it's Councillor McKibben's motion and Councillor McCarthy seconded that this a 0.6 needs to go in there?
Would you consider that, Andrew? The 0.6 go in?
I'd consider it. I wonder if it's appropriate if we could have a comment from the Director of Technical Services, because I'd just like to hear his view on that, because I think I understand what you mean, Clive. But I think you've spoken to Chris about it, so he should make a comment on it.
Yeah, through the chair. Thanks, Councillor McKibben. Yeah, look, certainly with regard to the expenditure to date, look, we have really got to a point where we have exhausted, the funding. Hence why I'm, I suppose, put a report toward council in regard to the 16,500 to complete the 75 metres that's required. Again, I have furnished a bit of a report there this morning for the General Manager's consideration regarding the acquittal or the reconciliation of costs. So a number of things there where Councillor McCarthy's also raised the issue of posts for Lindell Green. Discussion has been had with the fencing contractor in terms of protecting our fencing asset and having an offtake for Lindell Green as a provision. And at the end of the day, regarding the protection of the fence asset, it's recommended that council consider its position regarding the application of the oil spray for longevity of the fence. So, number of factors in that, and recognising Councillor McKibben's point, where not just 200 metres but 275 metres would certainly equate to just a little bit more of a margin of cost of around about $2,887 from memory would be incurred. So these are additional costs that certainly would need to be considered by council in relation to taking from potentially open space contributions. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
The offset fencing?
Chris, I think Councillor McKibben's asking about the offset fencing and where a potential standpipe could be located in accordance with Councillor McCarthy's suggestion.
Yep. Again, thanks, Madam Mayor. Yeah, Councillor McCarthy, certainly taking on board your request. Certainly that can be taken into account without, I suppose, a full-blown master plan as such. The positioning of that is not known, but certainly can be provided for now. Whilst that fence material would be ordered, if council was to proceed, would take up to 8 weeks, along with another order that's already a customer order that's already current. I believe we would be taking stock of that material within 8 weeks, and within that 8-week period, we could certainly discuss that with the fencing contractor about a location for the future filling point, which would be opportunistic, I suppose, from the Beaconsfield Road for filling of water carts and the like. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Can I just clarify to the director, the setback, are you suggesting that that will be post and rail fence, the same as the other fence? Is that the
Yep, through the chair. Yeah, certainly that would be a continuance of post and rail, not unlike the inset for the access to the O'Connell Sport and Rec ground. We could do an inset of the fence to allow, I suppose, for a pull-off area. So say for, trucks or clients to be able to fill from an overhead or some sort of water filling dispensing facility adjacent to the Beaconsfield Road. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor McKibben.
Unmuted, am I? Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm still a little bit confused, because if we've got to order the fencing now, because it's got an 8-week lead time, we actually need to know whether we're going to have this further indentation in the fence, which will require more materials. So we actually need to make a decision now to order that, to have actually more than 16,500. Say, for instance, we've got 4 more panels. Because otherwise we'll be at the end of 8 weeks, we'll have decided, the technical services director will come back with the cost of doing this. Then he'll suddenly say we need 8 more panels, and we'll have to go off and order 8 more panels at that stage. I'm just not quite clear as to how it's the director of technical services is suggesting this should be handled, noting this issue. And also, I'd also like to know this protective coating, how often do we have to apply it? Should we be applying it in another 4 years? Because I'm sure and I don't know whether the O'Connell Community Group would be prepared to do the follow-up maintenance on, every 4 years applying the coat.
Through the chair, very good questions, but that's what a whole of life report at the reconciliation stage will provide for, Councillor McKibben. I think that's a very good point that you raise. Look, I've had a conversation with the fencing contractor, who's indicated that the protective coating is a good way to issue longevity, but it will require to be reissued after a point in time. So it'll have to be included as part of our whole of life costs. In regards to whether council wants to put an infill point at this point in time as a preferred option for water to be sourced, Councillor McKibben's absolutely correct. Like, the last thing you want to do is do something like, or not do something like that, and then have to come back and retrofit it or pull it out and do that again. So if council are of an opinion that they want us to do that, I'd suggest a 0.6 that allows us to bring back a short report to March outlining what the additional costs and lengths would be should council propose to do that. This will still allow us to get on the front foot with ordering the fence, but then give you more of an understanding on what that would look like.
Councillor Gibbons.
Yeah, through the chair, just to clarify a couple of things with Councillor McCarthy. So you have a straight fence line along Beaconsfield Road. Then you're going to have to recess in to get into the ground because the fence would be too close to the Richmond Road. So that's where you'd like to extend the fence so that they'd fill up in the laneway on Beaconsfield Road rather than in the ground. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct, but my opinion was that you go south of the gateway so that you keep your side distance right from your RMS requirements. In other words, as you come down, you don't hinder that. But reason why I thought we should consider it now, because going by the reports that we get from council, how much is it going to cost you to get a road from the gates down to the fill point?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm
So
understanding
you could be
that.
looking at 100,000 for a road. So all I'm saying is, while we got this one contractor down there working, why aren't we looking at having the setback provided now? It still doesn't give you a standpipe up there,
No, you got
but it's something for the future. But that's all I was getting at. We've got the chap working there. You have this set point which is big enough to get a car and a trailer or a small truck off to a filling point that was come in the future.
So
but I
that's,
see the filling point as being back towards Black Springs from the existing gateway.
so you're going to have two recesses, one to get into the ground and then another one to get into the filling point. Not
Well, I
in
don't
the
think
one.
there's one into the ground at the moment, is there?
Well, there
Through
wouldn't
the
be,
chair,
but
there is.
There is.
have to
yes.
be a
It's
recess.
done though, isn't it?
Yep.
It's done. So you're creating another one up here.
No, it's not a.
You've got the existing one here into the ground.
Yeah, it's like that fence still stays.
Yeah. So it is recessed in.
It's only recessed, but it doesn't have a gate.
That's costed in here then.
No, it's not.
The first recess into the ground though is.
First in the
Yeah,
ground is
So
yeah,
you want another recess up in the Black Springs end.
to provide a
Yeah.
filling point.
Two recesses in 170 metres, 150, 70 metres. You understand now, and then the cost the poly pipe to run it over there to a stand pipe.
Through the chair, I don't think Councillor McCarthy is recommending that we move the current location. It'll come as part of the development of the O'Connell Recreational Master Plan. I think what Councillor McCarthy is requesting is that council look at putting a second recess that could accommodate a downpipe in the future, rather than retrofitting an existing fence. And
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Let's go.
So we would need then 8.6.
And about $1,000 more.
I think it should come back.
Yeah, we need to know exactly what that is going to be otherwise.
through the chair, I'd really like to bring it back to council so as we're all on the same page before we get that. But
So Councillor McCarthy, can I have a 0.6? So I can run that past Andrew, Councillor McKibben. And I also can't see Councillor Kellam on the screen. I'm not sure whether Councillor Kellam may want to speak to this.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I wasn't sure whether you wanted to speak to it or not. I couldn't see you.
I would like to say a couple of things. I think that the points raised by Councillor McCarthy and Councillor McKibben are quite valid. What I'm disappointed by is the fact that even though these points have been discussed with council staff, none of it appears in the business paper. And I find this business paper deficient. I support the amendments as they exist and would expect to see a proper business paper which gives all councillors all the information available to make a reasoned decision at the March ordinary meeting.
Are you saying that you think the amendment should have been in the business paper, Councillor?
No, Madam Mayor, I'm saying the information should have been in the business paper. It could reasonably be expected it would be raised because two councillors had spoken with the technical services director and others. And so we're trying to make this on the run. I do agree with the amendments that are there, but you know, that's information that should have been reasonably foreseen in putting together this business paper. And it shows a deficiency in the ability to write a cogent paper that councillors can read beforehand with all the available information and make a proper decision. And I thank Councillor McKibben and Councillor McCarthy for raising the issues that they were aware of.
Thank you for your comment, councillor. So, response to that?
I'm happy to respond to that through the chair. This process is been aligned to a number of council resolutions, and this process certainly was provided to follow those. The only reason that this application has been put into this business paper is through the advice from a contractor that says if council was able to make a decision in this instance, the lag time could be substantially reduced. If council are of the opinion that this needs to be dealt with at the March meeting, I'm more than happy to defer this project, put the report to council with the information that's been provided and added. However, it may mean that the lag times grow to an extended period.
Okay, councillors. Councillor McCarthy, we need a 0.6 here that we need to.
I just
vote on
wonder
this
whether
amendment.
Andrew would consider installing the 0.6 if council consider the fill point south of the existing gateway. And I take on board the general manager's comment that there was a proviso, possibly if we put the order up, we might have got this material in 4 weeks, but like I said, I had input into this. It didn't come back in the paper. Anyway, I'm just a bit disappointed too. Like Mark.
Okay, so we have a 0.6. So, and Councillor McKibben, are you happy with 0.6?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am happy with 0.6. The only issue that concerns me is if we need 4 extra panels, it's probably going to cost us $4,341. Are we then going to make an order for that at, say, the March meeting, which means we won't be ordering it now, and that'll be a further installment, and we won't be tagging it on to the end of another order, which is, I understand, the opportunity we have now, and that's why we're looking at this $16,500 proposal for the additional 75 metres. That's my concern. We suddenly have this orphan order coming out of the March meeting for, say, 4 panels to allow for this ingress. I'm not sure how we handle that unless we increase the 16,500 to a figure, say 20,500, subject to 0.6 below, being investigated by the Director of Technical Services. I'd ask the General Manager how he intends to handle that. I think, and on the comments made by Deputy Mayor Callum, I think I alluded to all those issues when I raised this amendment and the necessity. I also did suggest to the Technical Services Director that he might like to circulate a resolution today, a reconciliation today to all councillors to look at. So we had it prior to the meeting, but we didn't receive that. And I appreciate the time was probably short. But that's my question to the General Manager and the Technical Services Director. I support the addition of 6, but will that then create an orphan order at the end of March for, say, 4 additional panels to allow for this inlet that will then be hard to tag on to another order, and we have to get another budget amount for that? Because in my quick calculation, if it's 4 panels, it's going to cost us $4,341.58.
With the council's indulgence, I agree and wasn't aware that there was an input being proposed. However, in saying that, if we made a provision in condition 1 that says up to $21,000, which would cover the 4.5, but remembering it's up to rather than a number, that gives the Technical Service Director an opportunity to go back to receive a an amended quote to allow for that indent. Noting that it'll be over and therefore there'll be some, we won't need that much money in order to do the thing that you've said, rather than having a orphan quote of 4 panels.
Councillor Donny.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate the diligence with which Councillor McKibben and Councillor Kellam wish to put forward this motion. Against that, I also see that Council has been acting in a way it always does. I've spoke to the director about the caps, bit of a discussion there. Councillor McKibben spoke about the ingress, Councillor McCarthy spoke about the ingress, and Councillor McKibben spoke about reconciliations. I don't see those pressures as necessarily criticisms, as long as we're at the end of the game, we have the rigorous information in front of us. Now, I did mention to Councillor McKibben, I believe yesterday, that we could use plastic or tin cups, and I'm glad he's suggested we use gold caps. I think I thought that would be rather nice. But if the councillors are suggesting that this is expensive and then keep adding thousands to it, then I might bring the selection of caps back into that funding amount as well, just to make that point. Madam Mayor, I'm happy really with council to either add 6 so we can get that order in, because I think that's sensible, and trust that all the other details of that motion will be provided by the Director of Technical Services, and we will have an accurate and due process accounting of the funds before us. I don't think we need to worry about this as much as we are.
Councillor. Okay, councillors, I'm going to put this amendment now in 6 parts. You all have it in front of you. Point 1 has now been changed to say up to $21,000 ex-GST to take up this egress. I'm going to put the amendment. All in favour.
Madam Mayor, I think Councillor Kellam wanted to talk.
Councillor Kellam, are you indicating you wish to speak?
He's talking.
Madam Mayor, I don't have the amendment in front of me.
Okay, you want me to read it out for you?
If we could share screen, it'd be easier. Thank you.
Can you indicate when you're ready, Councillor Kellam, please?
I've got it, Madam Mayor.
Okay, councillors, I'm going to put that amendment in 6 parts. All in favour? Councillor Kellam, are you in favour?
I've got my hand up, Madam Mayor.
You weren't on my screen. Thank you, councillors. The amendment's carried. The amendment now becomes a motion. All in favour of the motion? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 0503, STP Steering Committee update. There's a recommendation that council confirm its position in relation to the scope of the sewage treatment plant project as only the sewage treatment plant and not the initially included East Oberon reticulation component, and that council reaffirm its request to retain all of the restart funding allocation. I move it, please. Councillor McKibben and Councillor Kellam. Thank you. Councillor McKibben. You wish to speak to this?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So what has happened broadly to councillors who are not on the STP steering committee is that the government, although we went to the government seeking to say we would deal with the East Oberon sewerage later, but we had kept it basically in abeyance, but may not be proceeding. And what was the attitude of the government if we did not proceed? Would we keep those grant funds? The government has basically indicated to council staff and to Gary Stiles that basically they want a decision from council in relation to the East Oberon before they will make a decision in relation to going ahead and for further grant funding. So it's a bit like a catch-22 situation that has arisen. So the STP Steering Committee considered this in detail, and it was our view that basically we had no choice but to make the decision now in relation to East Oberon and say that we would not be going ahead at this stage and that we would be withdrawing that, and then asking the government to reallocate those funds to the STP after us having made that decision. There's obviously no guarantee that the government will reallocate those decisions, but if we don't make this decision now, it appears that we'll be perpetually in limbo in that the government is unlikely to make a decision to proceed ahead with this and for further grant funding. So on the basis of that, of the position we've been put, we have no alternative, I believe, than council determining that we will not proceed with the East Oberon and advising the government accordingly.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kellum.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Councillor McKibben's summation is very accurate. We must make this decision and that is confirm our views on East Oberon for us to progress. And I support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments, councillors? Can I say to proceed? So I think I don't personally have a problem with this.
Yes.
Councillor
Didn't we only
McCarthy?
have one failure out of 50?
Sorry,
Wasn't there only one possible failure out of 50 residents?
one possible failure.
Well,
Septic tank.
we done an audit,
Oh, I'm
didn't we?
sorry, the audit of the septic system.
Yeah,
Yes,
and was found only to be
Yes.
one faulty out of,
that's correct.
yeah, so doesn't that give us a pretty good indication?
Yeah, that was my point. Any other comments on this one, councillors? I'm putting the recommendation. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, councillors, there are no closed session reports this evening, so I'm going this afternoon, so I'm going to close the meeting at 3:10. Thank you, councillors, and thank you to our community that have tuned in.